All right, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I can't wait to introduce this guest. One is I just got finished reading his book, you know, Tiger Style. It was incredible, a must read for everybody. But this guest, he was a college wrestler at Michigan State, which was, big time wrestling, three-time All Big Ten wrestler, became the head coach at University of Missouri in 1998. And if you read the book and he talks about how it started and where it is today, it's totally incredible. But I'm going to rip off some stuff here that you guys aren't going to believe. But he's got 64 individual conference champs, right? And some of these numbers may have changed. 192 NCAA tournament qualifiers. That means 192 of his wrestlers qualified for the NCAA tournament. 69 All-Americans. I don't think some schools have two. Um, Six of his wrestlers have won national championships, won the title 10 times, maybe more since this has been written. And his record 334 wins, 120 losses, and three ties, 12 conference championships. And I think that was in a row, if I got that right, between two conferences, Big 12 and the MAC, and back in the Big 12. An author, Tiger Style is the book. Got to read it, must read. Welcome to the show, head coach Brian Smith. How you doing?
Doing great, Jeff.
Well, welcome to the show. Brian, I got so many things to ask you. I read your book, and for those that are looking, I'm going to just show real quick. Here's the book on the screen. For those that are on YouTube watching this, it's a must read. Got to read it. It's a quick read too, and the stories in here about his how he built the team, built the culture, built the way of life for these wrestlers, and the lifestyle these kids are living, and where they've gone to, and the things they've accomplished. It's just incredible. But before I start peppering you with a bunch of questions, do me a favor for those who might not know who you are. Maybe tell the audience just a little bit about yourself.
Uh, I was a coach's son, so all I ever wanted to do was be a coach, and I thought it was going to be a football coach. But my dad convinced me to become to go out for wrestling in ninth grade, and my life made a drastic turn at that point because then all of a sudden I fell in love with wrestling, and it just took over my life, and here I am, still doing it for a million years. But
Yeah.
really have a passion for coaching, and it's just been something that I've just and leadership. So read a lot of books on leadership and things like that, and just got interested in getting involved in the NWCA with coaching coaches, and just so nonstop wanting to learn about coaching and becoming better and coaching my coaches, and then we developed our culture, which is Tiger Style. And so when you think about it's these words, people would ask me, what is Tiger Style? It's the culture that it's the way we live. And it's the only sport at the University of Missouri that when they do like the results, it'll say Mizzou football wins, Mizzou basketball, Mizzou softball. With wrestling, it's Tiger Style wins. And it's
That's
because
so
we
cool.
always say it's the culture that wins. And so we don't want Missouri wrestling defeats. We want Tiger Style wins. And that's the only way they report us is Tiger Style. And everybody
That is
knows
so
it's the
cool.
wrestling program.
And
So
in your book, you talk about how like you invented Tiger Style,
in
but
a
besides,
way, it was just a breakdown we were doing at the end
yeah,
of practice. And one of the reasons we were doing that is Jeremy Spates, who was an All American for me from Norman, Oklahoma. His dad was the head coach of Oklahoma, but I coached with him at Cornell. So I stole him up here. And his team in high school was the Tigers. Then they used to break down Tiger Style. But then it was like our fourth year, we were having success and it was starting to happen. And I grabbed my coaches and I said, write this down. And we were in the finals of a tournament, a dual tournament. And I said, guys, what does Tiger Style really mean to you? And they started telling them all
mhm.
these things and writing it down like, man, it's the way we do things. We take the stairs. We're not going to do it the easy way. We're going to do our one mores. And they started coming up with all these, words that meant and things that we do, the way we live, we show up, we We don't cut the corners in the room. We run around the lines. We take the stair, all these things. And I started putting it, and I was reading all these books, and it's like, man, I got to write this down. We got
Yeah.
to start putting this down so our guys can not only just say it, they're going to live it and
Yep.
constant teaching of it. So we put it everywhere. We started putting it everywhere. I wrote it down, made the triangle, kind of a wooden triangle,
Yeah.
and that's
Yep.
how it became.
Which is on the back of your book,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So I got to ask you I mean, you're a busy guy.
yes.
I can't imagine a college head coach of a major, powerful school like yours. You have no time, right? But in your book, you've listed out. I should have counted them, but I didn't. There's pages of books that you recommend that you have personally read. For those who say, "Hey, I can never find any time to read," which I
No,
think
you
is
can't.
crazy.
Yes.
How did you figure out how to get this into your schedule?
Well, I've been blessed to have a lot of really good leaders. And I think a part of leadership, when you read about the great leaders, they all read and they
Hmm.
make time to read. And I remember another guy telling me, "You can you read for 5 minutes a day?" And I'm like, yes. And I started waking up early. I'm an early riser anyway, but instead of getting up and getting on your phone or doing something else, I wake up and I read a book. And so that's just it became a habit. I started
Yeah.
with 5 minutes, and 5 minutes became like, man, that's not enough. I want to keep reading. The next
Yep.
thing I know, I'm reading usually about a half hour every day. Now I even walk to work, so I have Audible, and I'm
Okay.
listening to a book and I'm reading to a book. So I'm doing two different books at a time. So I'm able to finish a couple books a week. So it's just a habit that I've developed, and it keeps me sharp and it gives me things to talk about with people and especially my team.
Yeah.
And I just think I think if you want to grow as a person, you need, and I read different, I don't just read sports books. I was a history teacher my first couple of years and studied
Okay.
history. So during COVID, we had time. I learned about Harry S. Truman.
Okay.
He's from Missouri. I want to know the history, some history of Missouri, because I've
Yeah.
lived here for so long, but I really read some great books on Truman. So it was really cool. So
Yeah.
that's just,
That's
but
phenomenal.
that was developed through a habit,
Yep.
developing a good habit. And I've done that with my team now, and I have a library on an Excel spread, and they come in and they check them off, and I write it, I type it in there that they borrowed that book. So I have like over 260 books right now
Oh,
that
that's
are here
great.
in the library, and they can borrow books. And I've even had other coaches in other sports come up to my library.
Oh,
I
that's
think when I
phenomenal.
retire, I'm not going to bring it home. I'll probably donate it to Mizzou,
Yeah. Oh, that's
The
awesome.
Smith Library.
That's
So
that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. So let's go backwards a little bit, right? You're a head coach of one of the premier wrestling teams in the country, right? You wrestled at one of the best, the big teams in the country. Can you talk about recruiting? What it was like when you got recruited out of high school to now, what it's like to recruit the kids today as the main guy who does it. And I think in your book you talked about one of your wrestlers who you gave him a walk on because he wasn't a state champ, and you only
Michael
give
Chandler.
okay, and you only give scholarships to state champs, right?
Well, no, the more successful wrestlers.
Okay,
Now you're looking at kids that are making world teams, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it was a different era.
So what was it like when you got recruited? What's it like now? And what do you look for? I know it's in your book, but what do you look for in a kid to come wrestle for you?
Well, I don't. I mean, I feel like we've evolved. You grow, but you don't change. You're going to want great kids to be. So when I was getting recruited, what was important to me is kind of what I hope is important to the kids I'm recruiting. I wanted to develop a relationship with the coach that was recruiting me, and that he cared about me and was going to
Mm,
be invested in me. And so the reason I chose Michigan State was Pat Melkovich was the guy that called me, and he was an amazing wrestler, an amazing coach. And so I developed it. And when it ultimately came down to the decision, I was knew that he cared about me as a person, and he cared about me and wanted to develop me as a wrestler.
but
So
how did you figure that out in the recruiting process? Because sometimes the coach, I'm not this, they can kind of tell you stuff, but what made you feel that he really cared?
just little things he would do, whether
Yeah.
it's writing you a note, calling you constantly, asking you about your other things in life.
Right.
And it wasn't just a quick phone call. It was always just, hey, what are
Right.
you working on now? And what are you doing? And I've learned that as a coach that you really want to get to know the student athlete through these conversations.
Yeah.
We write notes to kids. We
Yeah.
write a note, a
It's in your
personal note
book.
to a kid
It's in your book.
every week
Yeah.
that I've been, recruiting just started up and we're starting to write the notes, and the notes will go with a, one of the topics of Tiger Style. The first graphic they got was on believe. So I'm writing a note on the back to the kid about believe. I'm getting notes from kids. Now I'm getting text. Hey, I got your letter. It's so awesome. Kids are excited to get
Yeah.
mail. It's
Yeah.
funny because they don't get mail anymore. So now they're
Right.
getting this mail from us with notes,
Yeah.
handwritten notes. There's just
Yeah.
some kids don't even have to learn cursive anymore in school, and I'm writing
Yeah.
notes to them.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking for a kid that's bright. So we're looking
Mhm.
for that elite student. I mean, we had 7 or 8 academic All-Americans this year, and we had 11 kids in grad school. So when I coached at the Ivy Leagues at Cornell University, I realized, man, we took 10th in the country. We had national champ, All-Americans. I'm like, man, I can get good kids like this. I
Yeah.
can get bright kids like this. The money goes further. There's only
Yeah.
so many scholarships in the sport of wrestling, and
Right.
there's academic award out there. Boy, when you start to mix that, your money goes further and you can
Yeah.
have more depth in your room and more wrestlers. So
Right.
academics is an important thing. We want a kid that's not only just bright, but he's invested in it where, man, I'm struggling in this class. I'm taking this AP class and it's challenging me, but I'm going to get through it. And I see that he's got a growth mentality. And that's the other thing I want to talk to a kid about a loss or a not so great match that he had and hear what he says. Is he making excuses? Oh, the referee, or I didn't eat right,
Mm.
or man, I just got to get better. I got to do this better. I realize when I walk off the mat, I want to, they're analyzing it and they know what they got to do. And I did it. Not, I
Yeah.
didn't fail. The referee failed me. My coach gave me the wrong game plan. I want to hear that I failed. I got to do better. And they have
Yeah.
that growth mentality. And I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, but the other big thing is a great teammate. I want kids that
Mm.
care about others and will help others. And I think I might have told that story in the book. If I didn't, I always tell this story. When I was recruiting Keegan O'Toole, who was a 2-time national champ for me, 5-time All American, I watched him in his state semifinals and he was going to win his 4th title. So it wasn't, I went up there to see him win it. He's
Yeah.
pinning the kid in a cradle
He's
and
looking at the other mat.
he's watching the other
Yeah. That's
mat.
in your
And I'm like,
book.
what the heck is he doing? He's
Yeah.
watching his teammate, and his teammate's about to pull off an upset to make the finals.
Yeah.
And he pins the kid. The referee's he's pulling away. The ref's trying to lift his
Yeah.
arm, and he's running over, so overjoyed for his teammate,
Yeah.
not him. And I took a picture of it, sent it to my assistants. I said, this is a difference maker in a program.
Yeah.
These are the intangibles that you can't see, like a speed or a jump. This is something you see that definitely affects the room in a great way.
Yeah.
And Keegan O'Toole has been nothing
Yeah.
but great. And I just hired him as an assistant coach because he's just this person that cares about others. And
Yeah.
that makes a difference because you're a team. It may
Yeah.
be an individual sport, but he wants to help others. And he was helping that young man get better throughout the season and was overjoyed that he made
Yeah.
the state finals.
Yeah. That's in your book. You put it in there. I
Yeah.
read it. Yeah. I'll
But
tell
those
you.
are, but that's a quality
Yeah.
man. If I could get if I have this superstar that cares about himself in a business world, or this kid that cares about others and will work
Yeah.
hard, I want
Yeah.
that person because
Of
your
course.
whole room is going to elevate,
Right.
and that's what
Right.
you want. You want the whole company to elevate, not just one superstar.
Right. That's awesome. So, can we talk about food for a second?
Okay.
Right? Is I don't know how they do it, but you're their coach. You've actually done it. How do these young men deal with the cutting, the weight loss and stuff? Go to your intense practices, go to class, do homework while they're hungry. Like when I'm hungry, I get hangry and like I don't even want to talk to somebody, right? How do these guys do it?
Well, the good thing is I don't think kids cut as much weight as in the past, and
Okay.
now we have things where we are checking for their hydration and all
Yep.
that in the beginning of the year, and we tell them this is their body fat percentage. So, and I just think with college, with these kids with the high degree, Like I have a kid that'll be a freshman next year. He's going to graduate in 3 years and then go to law school. He's one of my best wrestlers. And so he's going to be doing that along with wrestling. He's got to be smart about it. He can't cut
Yeah.
huge weight. He's got
Right.
to stay strong. You've got to eat smart. So
Hmm.
it's if you eat the right way and you're smart about what you're eating and how you're working out, you're going to lose the fat and you're going to get
Yeah.
your body down to weight. If you try to, work it off where you're just sweating it off
Yeah.
in one day, like in the old days, the guys were doing, then you're going to really hurt your body and you're going to yo-yo diet. Our guys get it down to a close to weight and they're really good about it. We
Yeah.
go on the road with the road trips and we're eating the night before as a team. Some of
Yeah.
them aren't eating as much, but they're still eating something because that's their
Yeah.
energy, and that we're teaching them that. We even have nutritionists that work with them.
Yeah.
So it's just being, I
Eat
think,
smart.
more intelligent
Yeah.
about how you're doing it, and you got to have
Right.
energy in your body and teaching them that.
Yeah. Now, have they changed the rules of how much you're allowed to cut now or no?
Yeah, you can only with your body percentage and the hydration, you have to be when you get tested in the beginning of the year, they're going to take your body skin fold or whatever the ways they can do your body percentage.
Yeah.
And then they do a hydration test and they'll tell you, here's your minimum body weight you can make. And
Yeah.
so if they were thinking, man, I could be a 25 pounder and it's saying your minimum weight is 130, you're going to be a 33 pounder. You
Right.
can't make, where in the old days, guys would just do it. They would cut
Yeah.
that weight and look miserable and
Yeah.
now, so that I think that's controlled it better. I think kids in college realize having energy and feeling good is much better than not, cutting it wrong and feeling, and you have more injuries that way too when you're cutting
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
I know they're more intelligent about it,
Yeah.
and we
I
train
don't
them
I don't know
that.
how they do it though. It's just again, if I miss lunch, I'm miserable, you know. So I have a bunch of points here on the philosophy of your book, okay,
Okay,
that I wanted to ask you. And the first in your book, you talk about like anyone can achieve greatness, right?
without a doubt.
But if by embracing tiger style, but if you think about it, what's the first step they have to take in order to do that?
Happens between your ears, right? You got to have this thought of, when I speak to people or even talk to individuals, it's like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to accomplish? What's your purpose? What are you trying to achieve here? If you're working a job, what's your ultimate purpose? Well, I want to be a CEO. Well, if you're sweeping the floors right now and you want to be a CEO, then you better sweep the damn floors good. And you better, so they notice it and they move you up to the next position, to the next position. But have that purpose. But if your goal is to win a national title, it's got to start in your head. If
Yeah.
your coach is saying, man, you could be a national champ and you don't believe it, you're not going to become it. And so you have to believe. So that's the first level. That's the first pillar of Tiger style, having that belief. What do you believe you can accomplish? What are the things you're trying to accomplish in life? I wrote it down one time. I wanted to write a book and it was in my head and then it bugged me and I had to write things down more and I started to do things about it. So
Yeah.
it starts between your ears,
Starts
with
with
that belief.
if you got to believe in anything. If you don't believe, it's not going to happen, right?
Yep.
So
And then you got
so
to surround yourself with good people.
right.
And that's important. If you surround yourself with the people who are like, you're never going to be able to write a book or you're
Yeah.
not going to achieve a national title, those are the wrong people.
The
Oh,
naysayers.
the naysayers. And you're going
Yeah.
to get a lot of that. Even kids today have to deal with the
Yeah.
naysayers on social media saying, oh, this guy lost that match. He's never going
Yeah.
to attain, a national champ. How is he going to do this?
Yeah.
Turn it off, block
Yeah.
it out, get around the
Yeah.
people that believe in you. You can do so
Yeah.
much more.
It's funny you say that, Brian, because when I started doing this podcast a little over, a year ago, people are like, "Ah, you're crazy. What are you? You're never gonna get anybody on there."
Yep.
I'm like, "Yeah, I will," but now I have you. Like I have one of the elite coaches in the country on here. Like a year ago, I would have never like, "Oh my God." Now I have you,
But
which
you believed it.
I believed it,
And you
right?
work that
And I worked
and
at it,
which becomes the second level. Everybody can believe something, then you got to put it into an action, which is
Yeah.
competing. When I write the word compete, everybody's like, oh, you think the Friday night or the Saturday match or a football game. No, competing is waking up and what's your first thing you're going to do to compete in life? Are you going to read a book
Mm,
or are you going to get on your phone and go through garbage? And what is your plan for the day? Admiral McRaven, make your bed, accomplish
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
We walk the stairs instead of the elevator. So you
Right.
walk the stairs as an accomplished. They don't even think it's a deal anymore because it's a habit now.
It's just
When you
automatic.
start to develop, when you compete at things and develop good habits, then that starts you on your road to what you that belief was in
Yeah.
your head.
Yeah.
So it's developing good habits is competing, and
Yeah.
competing is also when you compete at things, you're going to fail at things, and when you fail at things, it doesn't mean it means you've just had a tough day.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about that tough day? Are you going to let the naysayer say you should quit now? Your mind's going to tell you that some days, but you just got to pick yourself back up and work at it. Keep a positive
Yeah.
mindset. We have a thing called end the day with a positive. So if you had a bad day, you're running a financial company. If you had a bad day, something went bad, end it with something positive. Call somebody up that is one of your better clients and say, how are things going, and just keep that relationship going. With my guys, if they had a bad day with finishing a single leg, then I'll say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? Well, take 5 minutes and work with a guy, finish your single leg, practice it, and end it positively. Because if you don't, if you went home after that bad day, Jeff, you're going to go home, be in your car, mad. You're going to get home.
Oh,
It's going
yeah.
to affect your family. It's going to affect something. Maybe somebody calls you up that's your friend. You're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with that right now. Or you might be rude to
Yeah.
them and ruin their day. And how many people you can affect by that. But ending the day with a positive when you're competing is important. And, going to bed and go through the things you did good instead of rehashing your mind and building
Yeah.
up anxiety. I accomplish things.
Yeah.
There
Just
are
have the
so
right
many times a kid
re-
comes in my office and you can see that they're struggling.
yeah.
And we talk about mental health in today's day.
Yep.
And I'll say, they'll be like, man, the sky's falling. Coach, just nothing's going right in my life. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. The first question I ask, where'd you go eat? They're like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I went to the athletic cafeteria. I'm like, isn't that awesome? What'd you
Yeah.
eat? Well, I had salmon and steak. And
Yeah.
I'm like, do you realize how great? Yeah, it is. It's an amazing place,
Yeah.
the food they give us. And I'm like, and who'd you sit with?
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, my good friends I'm like, they're
Yeah.
pretty awesome too. Have you told them these problems that you're having and maybe they can help? No, I just don't want to. I said, that's why they're your teammates. They're going to bring you
Yeah.
up. And it's amazing though how their posture changes and they
Yeah.
start when you mention that you do have good things in your life.
Yeah.
It's being blocked out by the negative, and you got
Right.
to change those thoughts.
Well, you were reading my mind. Speaking of thoughts, is I was going to ask you, you kind of hit it. Like you've been coaching for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you know the total number of kids you've coached?
I don't know. I guess if it was 10 kids a year, because you have about 40 on a team, so you'd have 10 a year over, what is it, 38 years, maybe close to 400 kids.
400 kids,
Yeah.
right?
So
So,
hopefully I impacted most of them or did
yeah.
something positive
Yeah,
to
without
impact
doubt.
them to do something good in their life,
Yeah.
which I do believe. That's the
So,
joy of why you do this.
so those 400 kids, I would imagine, I'm just going to throw this out there, there had to be one that just didn't want to believe anything. As a coach, how do you handle that? I know you just said, "Hey, listen, did you have a good food, good teammates?" But if they just can't get past the negativity, how does a head coach deal with that?
You got to find, and you can't coach every kid the same way.
Right.
And that's something I've learned, that when you try to cookie cutter it, but you know I even heard an interview of John Smith, the legendary coach, that every kid's going to be different. They're not all going to be like you, and every kid's got to be coached. Every kid's been raised in a different community, a different family, a different dynamic, and you're going to have to, that's part of the building of the relationship, that you
Yeah.
get to know that, kid may have had a parent that died of cancer and you didn't know that, and they didn't have a mother or a father,
Yeah.
and so they deal with things differently, and you're going to have to get to know them and figure out how to push their buttons, that
Yeah.
what do they respond to. And sometimes it's I say hot, they're going to say, I want to be cold. And then I got to figure that and say, all right, I want you to do the hot thing. And they're going to do the cold. And I really wanted them to do the cold. And knowing that, know how to push
Right.
that button of that young man. And I've taught that to my assistants. You got to figure that out with them, build that relationship, get them to know, and they're going to get a trust in you,
Yeah.
that they're going to say, okay. and they feel like they can talk to you, then they're going to feel like they can wrestle for you, and then they're going to give you more, and you're going to
Yeah.
get more out of them that way.
Right. Well, speaking of trust, you know, how long does it take for one of your athletes just to have blind faith in you and your staff and what's going on in the school?
That's, part of that is how open they are in the recruiting talks. You develop that relationship with them and through all that, and then they come on the visits. But you got to dig. I think in when you're, and a lot of it is when I talk to young assistants, they think recruiting talks are telling them about Missouri. And I said, really, it's you trying to not talk and or dig deeper into what they are,
Yeah.
find out who impacted them, find out why they wrestle. What joy do they find from, the wrestling, and what's their favorite subject? What are they, and dig deep into them and get them to talk. Don't give them yes and no questions, and find out more about them. Because when you start to understand them and you really get to know them, they're going to feel comfortable with you. And then every time I do a recruiting call, and even now I make guys ask me questions, ask coach a question, anything. And they may ask me about my family. They may ask me, what was a big win for you? Coach, what was a kid from your early years that, you felt like you impact? I get some really good questions, and
Yeah.
they're finding out about me and how I do things. And this relationship then starts to grow. But then my wife is invested in the program too. We've been married. We're going on 32 years. We have the team over.
Yeah.
We want them in the house. We even have an FCA huddle that my team doc runs. And so he's investing in the young men and having them over with his wife at a ton of guys going there. So they know we care about them as people. And I
Yeah.
do think that is a part of, when we talk about the Tiger style culture and, it's a family, it really is. And I see, one of my guys is struggling right now with health. It's Ben Askren, and it's all over the news. The amazing part of it, and I've talked with his family too, and his brother and his dad and his mom, is how many guys are coming to his aid that
Yeah.
are so close with him, and are just were impacted by him as a student athlete and a person, and how people are coming together to
Yeah.
help him. And that's a part of the culture. And I was talking with his dad just this morning about that, man, I'm really glad the culture is still there, that guys are still living it and are by his bedside, writing
Yeah.
out reports in the group chats to each other. And it didn't get on social media for like 10 or 11 days because everybody kept it within. We even
Yeah.
flew him back from Vegas, and guys raised money for it. But that's because it's a caring community. There are people that
Yeah.
really care and love for each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's they're teammates. And they're not just teammates, they become family mates.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
that's
And
what we want it to be.
yeah, and as a former college athlete myself, who's been out of it for a really long time, it's you can't explain that, can you? Like you try, how do you describe that on a piece of paper of what that teammate, family mate is
Yeah.
like?
I mean, if you have a brother or sister and you're close with them, and you go away to college and you miss your brother and sister, and you still talk to them on the phone and
Yeah.
tell them things, or a good friend from high school that you
Yeah.
stay in touch with, it's that you developed a relationship and you did things together, you failed
Yeah.
together, you excelled together,
Yeah.
you had fun together. It was
Yeah.
you grew up together.
Yeah.
And then when you're apart, you get back together, and it's like you've never been
Yeah.
apart. And
But I think there's another level to it as well. Is
as a
because
teammate,
with my
you go through
brother,
battles.
yes,
You
I
go
call it
through the
joint
battle,
suffering. You go through joint suffering together. And,
especially in wrestling.
yeah, and wrestling is just crazy. But the difference also with wrestling, and this is just my view, is that your teammates watch you win or they watch you get beat.
Hmm.
And they know when you come off that mat, they need to treat you differently each time.
Yes.
Because if they don't, it could be detrimental,
Yes, and that's part
right?
of the brotherhood, it's
Yeah,
just you've got to care for each other,
yeah,
and then help bring each other up.
right.
Don't
Don't
say
bring them
that
down.
wrong thing and bring him down. He's
No,
already there. Or if he's up, sometimes you may have to, hey, all right, but let's get
yeah,
back to work. I did see some things. We do a thing on Thursday. We call it Tough Talk Thursdays, where we have our hardest days,
yeah,
and it's a lot of tough live. And afterwards, they cool down. They sit in the groups that they wrestled in, and they keep notebooks, and they criticize each. They give each other critical thoughts on what they
yeah,
thought about how they. the other guy wrestled and what he can do better, what he did good. They take notes on it and make it
Yeah.
so it's they're critiquing, not the coaches, and
Yeah.
they're making each other better and holding each other accountable and
Yeah.
being able to accept constructive criticism.
And that's hard.
It is hard, but they're developing that I hope later in life when they get maybe a year end evaluation on a job and a boss says, "Hey, I really think you could get stronger in your sales pitch or whatever it may be," that they'll take it and say, "I'm going to get that." And we talked about that before with my first speech. So it's just one of those things you have to
Yeah.
learn from it.
Why don't you talk about that? I don't, those that are listening are wondering, what are you talking about?
They can read it. But
Yeah.
no, yeah. I mean, I got hired at Mizzou and I knew and my coach at Cornell, Jack Spates, used to make me go speak at banquets, but I was never, it's for everybody. When you first start giving talks, it's hard.
Yeah.
But as you grow, and that's why the wise men around the fires could tell the history of, and that's how history was passed down. I
Yeah.
was a history teacher through stories that you have to become a better storyteller. A storyteller grows better the older you get because you have more stories, you have more knowledge to give. And when I did my first talk at a coaches clinic down in Jeff City, there were 500 coaches. I got up there. I thought I prepared for it really good. And I get up there and give the talk and sat down and thought it was good. At the end of the session, the guy handed me a book and it was How to Be a Better Public Speaker. And I just looked at the book, looked at him, and said, I get the message. I wanted to, my first reaction was probably to punch him, but I didn't. And then I still have that book. And I'm like, it motivates me. I read it. I
Yeah.
started watching videos. I knew I had to get better. I knew being a Division I head coach, being a leader in anything, you have to be able to communicate,
Yeah.
whether it's with your workers, whether it's with the employees, the people you sell to, um, whether it's just people, your family. You have to be the better the communicator. When I go out to fundraise, part of my speaking that grew, I went out and spoke to Rotary clubs, to different people. I'm sitting in a family room with a family, a mom, a dad, a sister, a
Yeah.
brother, trying to sell them why I'm going to take care of it. I have to be a great communicator.
Yeah.
And so I improved. I watched film. Now you can watch YouTube. My brother
Yeah.
sent me a YouTube thing of one of the great soccer players speaking at our commencement, and it's amazing. I'm like, I love it. So that's where my reading came from. You
Yeah.
can read about these stories of Lou Holtz and Dan Gable, and they write it in a book. And the stories they're telling are you can give use other people's stories
Yeah.
in my talks. I'm talking about the culture of a Chick-fil-A or
Yeah.
the Houston Hospital, Anderson Hospital. There's
Yeah.
so many things that are out there that you can learn from. And you even talked about how you footnote or you put little
Yeah.
stickers on the book to save
Yep.
these areas, and
Yeah.
write notes on it. On You've learned something from
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
take notes in my iPhone on books and just write little notes on. I have about 150 books in my phone with notes that I go back, and if I'm sitting on a plain board, oh, this book was good. Good. I'm going to talk about this next week to the team.
Yeah.
I get
So
excited. Sorry.
that's
I
good.
love
No,
this
it's
stuff.
this is what this is all about, and we're talking about what you're doing today, which is just amazing. But if you read your book, or when everybody should read this book, you talk about day one of you were painting the walls to
Yeah.
to make things look better. Like, hey, we're in the penthouse, right? Like,
It wasn't that was a mindset.
I know. So can you talk about that? I mean, you literally you say you took over a program that was really struggling.
Yeah. I
What
mean, there were
motivated?
some positive. I know the previous coach, they didn't have the money and I didn't get
Yeah,
much of it either, but I just knew the mindset had to change
yeah,
because it was almost like the everybody in the state had accepted we're just not going to beat Oklahoma. We're not going
yeah,
to do this. So when I first got there, I knew from day one. At day one, we weren't going to beat them, but there were little things you could do to
yeah.
start to slowly change. And
Right,
so one of them was take the stairs. Another was if you don't have the best facility, what can you do to make it better? So we
right.
painted the locker room. We fixed up the fourth floor was where our offices were, which is the top floor. So instead of saying go to the fourth floor, it's a dump. Oh man, it's ugly. I started calling it the penthouse. And when I
Yeah.
say, when I tell people to come up to the penthouse now, they're like, oh, the penthouse. Oh, so you're in the, yeah. I said, we're the
Yeah.
only program that gets to be in the penthouse.
Yeah.
We're the only ones up there now. And people are like, wow, you're special. And it's a mindset. And when it first had it, it was awful. They'd come up and go, this is ugly, the green walls. But then
Yeah.
we raised money and put graphics up and knocked the wall down, put a glass wall, trophy case. And it's
Yeah.
just amazing now what you can do with this thought that it is
Yeah.
the penthouse. How are we going to make it that way? Let's treat it like it is. Let's come up with these ideas. It may take time. Even the practice gym was the basketball practice gym, but they had this thought of building this new arena at Mizzou. As soon as they got that thought, I'm like, whoo, that practice gym would be a even
Yeah.
nicer practice room for us. And so I had a graphic teacher make the gym. I had him come up here. It was a guy. I'm saying, Professor, I forget what his name was. Can you make a graphic of this? And he made me a poster that was huge, and I put it
Yeah.
on thick binding and hung it up on the wall. And the basketball coach would come off the elevator. They took the elevator and they'd go, what is that? I said, that's your gym. When you move out of here eventually, that's going to be our wrestling. And I had that. And there
Yeah.
were other teams fighting for the gym, but I really believe the picture kind of fooled people into believing
Yeah.
wrestling's going to get the gym.
Yeah.
And eventually the AD came up and said, let's make this gym your wrestling room. I'm like, yes, here
That
we
is so
go.
cool.
And
That is so
so,
cool.
it started with a belief, and then I
Yeah.
worked at it and told the other coaches they don't want to be up here. Told the volleyball coach, man, you can
Yeah.
practice in the arena every day. Where
Yeah.
you play, you'll go there. And she's like, yeah, you're right. Okay.
So you convinced them on where to go,
Yes, had
which
to.
is
You got
cool.
to
Yeah.
play that game.
So you built the culture. Well, let me say you rebuilt the culture into something special. You took it from a average program, let's say a non-believing that they could do, like you said, they can't beat Oklahoma mindset, to a powerhouse. That didn't happen in a day.
No,
What were some of the things that you had to do that maybe were obstacles or hurdles along the way while you were building that culture?
I think these small things get people to start to believe.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to have success. And so we're going to dress a certain way. Some of the guys, oh, this is silly. We have to wear this black shirt, shorts, and this
Mm,
gray shirt. Yes, it's discipline. You're going to do it. Even the lines in the room, you're not allowed to cross the circle. And they're
right.
like, this is silly. We're warming up for 5 minutes. What's the difference? I know you're not going to cut the corner. You're not going to cut through the circle. And if you're going to do it here in front of me, then you're going to do it outside of the outside of the wrestling room. So it's a mental thing. And then you have to go to every class. So that was the first year. We got to
Yeah.
get accomplish these small things: how to dress, how to act, taking stairs, not cutting corners, going to all these little things, and then starting to compete, give effort in the practice room. Can't be late. Guys know that. Coach Smith time, they call it, that you should be early. You should be here 15, 20 minutes early, and we'll discuss things. Maybe you can learn something, work on something. Have
Right.
that attitude. Waking up and reading a book. We started reading books, as a team. We picked a book every spring and we read it as a team. Then staying in the summer, and they started buying in. And it took 3 years to get the culture to really start to do all these little things. Everybody thinks
Yeah.
it's a big thing. We need a new football stadium. Well, that's not going to make you a better program.
No.
You have to, and then of course recruiting kids with our mindset, the growth mindset, kids that are bright, kids that are
Yeah.
believe that this culture is what I want to be a part of. When we send all these things and talk to these kids and they're like, I don't know about that. If they think it's like, why would he do that? I have a kid that was visiting the children's hospital. He went with the athletic department one week and he continued for 8 weeks. Every Friday he was going to visit the kids right across the street. There's a children's hospital. And
Yeah.
I'm like, Aiden, you've been going every week on your own? He's like, yeah, I know some of these kids have been there and I know them. I play video games with them. I'm like,
Yeah.
you realize how special that is? And I said, that's kind of the mindset you want to have. I want to do these things. Not
Yeah.
being forced to do it. And these habits become special and they start doing more. And once we got kids to start believing and doing one more and doing all these things, then we were
Yeah.
ready to, we believed, we were competing at it. We started to give the effort and the talent came in. I started having kids winning. And it got to that third year, we redshirted a lot of kids. I knew that fourth year we were ready. But mindset. I didn't know we were ready to beat the
Yeah.
big dogs yet. But so all summer, I think it was the last month, I hung up a sign everywhere, which was the fourth pillar of Tiger Style. You have to expect to win.
Mm,
I'm not going to say, hey, you're going to win. No, you have to expect it. Walk out there because you've trained right, you've lived right, you've done everything. You've gone to your classes, you're lifting your weights, you're doing everything right. That you have to now go out there with the expectation to win. Because in my first year, then we went to Oklahoma State and all these places. They expected to lose. They would look at banners, they would go,
yeah.
and you could just see it. Their body language would change like that hour before competition. They just didn't feel like they belonged. And we got them to the point with all these little habits, all these things doing it right, that they believed that they could win when they walked out there. They
Yeah.
expected it. And it was amazing. That first duel of that year was a top 10 team. And we went in, and it was a packed high school gym on the border. It was between us and Illinois. And I think a couple of I think two or three of the matches went overtime. I think we won 6-4 in matches, and we pulled off the upset. And it was a
Yeah.
huge win for us. And we went on to win 18 matches that year and only lose three. And it just completely changed the whole like just view of the program. Mizzou just beat a top 10 team. We beat a
Yeah.
lot more that year. And that from that point forward, the kids bought in. And then it's just holding them to those standards. And
Yeah.
that's the other part of coaching, continuing to do these things right.
Yeah. What was the locker room like after that win?
I
That
mean, they
must.
were very excited,
Yeah.
obviously, and that was one of my early teams. And then I think it was it was in the sixth year, 2 years later, we finally beat a team that we had never beaten in school history, Oklahoma State. They were ranked number one in the country, coming back as national champs. I think they ended up winning the national title that year. In the opening duel that year, we knocked off Oklahoma State in a high school gym of like 4,000 people. It was amazing. And I had old men coming up and hugging me and crying, saying that they never thought they'd see that day. And
Yeah.
the cool thing about it, there were young kids like 8 and 10 years old who eventually will wrestle for me. We're there,
Yeah.
and we do these campouts where we go away from campus the first weekend of school, and we
Yeah.
do campfire and we talk about the stories. And this is how I found out these kids were like at 10 years old. I was in this gym and I saw Mizzou beat Oklahoma State, and that was the day. I was a Missouri kid, I wanted to go to Missouri. Or as a
Yeah.
kid, a younger brother from
Yeah.
Kansas, like that, there was no doubt we can beat Oklahoma. I'm
Yeah.
going there. And I'm like, it changed not only our culture, but the culture of the state, where the youth kids were like, I want to wrestle for
Yeah.
Mizzou. Because when I got here, it wasn't always that way. Not everybody wanted to go to. Now the kids grow up, I want to be in the black and gold of Mizzou.
You said one of the pillars is expect to win. Well, you just set the tone that some of these younger kids, they expect to go to your school now.
You want that. And that
Yeah.
was when I did my interview for the job. I said, I got to get the home state to believe
Yeah.
in this program, that they can stay home, their
Yeah.
parents can drive close, be close, and they can watch their kids in the Hearn
Yeah.
Center, the electric atmosphere of it. We're going to
Right.
turn it into envision this. And so it's been cool. And we've
That's
also, the neat thing is the administration has been supportive. And
yeah.
we've even hosted, I think this will, in 2 years, we host, I think it'll be our 10th or 11th NCAA championship. And co-hosted by Mizzou and either St.
Yeah.
Louis or Kansas City, which is no other team in the country's had anything like that. That
That
we've
is
been able to
awesome.
bring it and educate the fans of how. I don't know if you've ever been to an NCAA wrestling champion. It's sold out. It's
I've never
amazing.
been to a championship. No.
It is amazing. It's 3 days of being sold out. It was just in Philly and
Yep.
just packed house where the Sixers and the Flyers play. Sold
Yeah.
out every session and
Yeah.
amazing. And but bringing that educates the media,
Yeah.
the young people that have never been to an event like that. They're like, even
Yeah.
administrators come to an event and they're like,
Like,
holy cow, we
yeah.
didn't know the NCAA wrestling was this big of an event.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think I may have told you when we talked on the phone, I never went to a college wrestling match in my life until a couple of years ago. I went to somebody said, "Hey, you got to come to Rutgers Penn State wrestling match in
oh,
the rack," right?
packed
And I'm
house.
like, "Okay, well, so I wasn't even in the door yet." And the
Yeah,
electricity that was going on. Then I walked in. I don't know how many people. There's 8,000 people in that place or
yeah.
whatever. And it was electrifyingly crazy. And I had
It's
second row
awesome.
on the mat seats.
Yep.
And I had what's the head coach's name for Penn State?
Goodell. Coach Goodall.
No, for Penn State.
Oh, Cal Sanderson.
He was, I was literally 3 feet from him.
Yeah. Did you
Yep. And
did you hassle him?
well, God, I didn't I'm like, I was like, what do I
Yell
do?
at him. Sit down,
Yeah.
Cal. Get him frustrated.
He doesn't move. He doesn't, you've seen him.
He
He
sits in the
doesn't
chair.
move,
No.
you know? And it was the funnest. It was unbelievable. I
Yep.
got turned on, like hooked to college wrestling. Now I'm watching it on TV. I'm doing everything I can. Like it's so cool to watch it, and to be there was intense. But you know,
It's funny you mentioned about Cal sitting there. One of the books I read was about Coach John Wooden, who's a
okay,
legendary basketball coach. And he talks about how the players would even talk. I've read some of the books of his players, how he never really coaches much in the games.
yeah,
He'll even call timeout and he's like, you know what to do. They're
yeah,
pressing. We've taught you that in practice. He doesn't get up and scream and yell and
yeah,
pull you out of games and stuff. And
yeah,
it's, uh, and it's something I learned because in my early days, I'm up and screaming and yelling. And the kids, it's such a fast amount of time that they
yeah,
don't even hear you half the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
That he does the I think the great coaches do their coaching in the practice room and prepare their kids, that you want to have this kid that believes in themselves, that everything you've taught them. And that's what I tell the
yeah,
kids, that you shouldn't have to be looking over. You should know that I've taught you, if he reaches, you're going to
yeah,
post, and you believe in that so much that you don't panic and have to, at a
yeah,
timeout or some break, I'll tell a kid something. But other than that, when they're wrestling, they got to believe in your coaching and go
yeah,
out there and execute it. And I think you
yeah,
can overcoach a kid during a match.
yeah,
Or in
yeah,
football and basketball, you see
yeah,
some of these coaches going bonkers. It's like, geez, if they
yeah,
did all those things and what you just yelled, it would be impossible.
yeah, yeah. So you talked about one more,
Yeah,
right? And the story in your book about the freshman, I think it was a freshman
yeah,
wrestling somebody. Can you talk about that? Because that story was so cool. Like I'm like, man, I can't imagine seeing that kid come bursting out of the locker room and say, "Let's go again, let's go."
yeah.
Can you talk
I mean,
about that?
my assistant was training for the Olympic trials. He
Yep.
was a very successful freestyle wrestler, so he was getting ready for it. And he would call a true freshman that may be redshirting and developing to work out with him that year. And so that kid got that. That was his extra stuff that he was getting to do and get better. And he wanted to do it, but he would sometimes get frustrated. And that day, he was getting the best of my coach. I sat in the room. We have a big room with we have stadium seating that I was sitting and eating my lunch and just I want to watch this go and see how Joe was doing with the kid. And I think they went a couple more goes, and after Joe had been getting taken down, and he goes and gets the last takedowns, my coach. And so the kid storms off, leaves the room, walks by, doesn't even say hi to me, walks by, kicks the door, you know, but instead of saying I was having a good day,
Yeah.
only goes by the last takedown. And I'm just sitting there, and Joe, my assistant, comes up, and we're talking, and my assistant just goes, man, it would have been great if he just, I wish he wouldn't get this upset. Maybe just stick around and keep wanting to get better, but he storms off. That's not a good thing. And all of a sudden, boom, the door kicks in. He's like, we're going one more. And I'm just like, I love that attitude.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going one more.
Yep.
And just imagine if everybody had that attitude
Yeah.
when things were tough or it wasn't going good, or just, man, we're not making any sales. So let's figure it out. We got
Yeah.
to do one more call or one
Yeah.
more, and
Yeah.
if everybody in the program collectively could do a one more, whether it's once a week or every day, do something to help somebody or to make the program better or to make yourself better, whatever, reading a book. If you choose to do those one mores collectively as a program, we elevate. And then
Yeah.
it just keeps getting better and better, and it becomes a part of the culture. So
Yeah.
one more is a huge thing, a part of the culture. The team's having a one more competition this summer.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And they broke into 4 groups. They have all sorts of points they can get. If you read a book, you get points. If you do an extra drill, you get points. All these things. The community service, you get points. And they're
Yeah.
going bonkers. Asking, because if they do an extra drill, they have to ask the coaches to be there. And then you got to take a picture of them and send it to the guy that keeps the point totals. But they're so competitive, they get like
Yeah.
stupid competitive. They're
Yeah.
bonkers about it. But it's fun to see that
Yeah.
competing for one mores makes you better.
Yeah.
And they're going to
And
have
it
that.
it it brings the team together even more.
It brings the team together. it makes them do more, and they're going to have that expectation to win now because
Right.
they've done these things, they've lived this life, and they're doing
Yeah.
this. It's not just a competition; it's to make yourself better.
Right.
You're making yourself better by doing community service,
Yeah.
doing these extra drills, doing these things to make yourself living better. So it's making a better team.
You talk about in the book about journaling,
Yes.
right? I do it, and I didn't start doing it until 2017.
Okay.
And I carry it with me. For some people, that's a long time ago, but I carry it wherever I go. I'm on page 756,
That's awesome.
right? And I track it, and I don't do it every day. I try
Right.
to, but I would say 3, 4 times a week I'm writing something in there. So can you talk about the importance of that and how did you get your athletes to do it? What value do they get from it, and how have you seen that like make a difference?
Well, I've had some guys do it, but we've now made it where everybody gets a journal. And so they get, it's really just a notebook,
Yeah.
and it's a blank notebook that they
Yep.
start the year off with. And so we have days where we do a mental day. It's usually Monday, mental Monday, and we'll have a topic, and I'll have them get your notebooks out, take some notes. If we ever have a guest speaker, I'll say, hey, get your notebooks out, your journals out. Let's take notes on it. You're going to learn something. If you were watching a video of something, if you want to, after practice. But it just started like that. Like, on Mental Mondays, we got to take notes on this. And then I started saying, after we teach something, you should be writing it down. What'd you learn today? Well, I learned Coach Maple was showing me this set where you roll the wrist and do this. And I'm like, did you write it down? No. Well, why don't you write down that you worked on this today? So tomorrow when you get in the room, if you forget something, you go to the journal and there it is. Plus, when you write things down, you remember it better.
Right.
And it's a
Right.
great habit to get into. When I read a book, I write notes on it so I have it.
Yeah.
And so it's just when I write notes to people, it's impactful.
Yep.
I get notes from people. So it's just the skill of writing is a lost art, but I think it's a great
Yeah.
thing. And so it just started with that after practices when we do our Tough Talk Thursdays that we talk, they're writing these notes down that they're getting critiqued on, the
Right.
things that people are telling them about, write it down. There's days that I'll just say, hey, what at the end of practice, write 3 or 4 things that you did good today. That's all I want you to do. End the day with a positive. Write 3 or 4 things. And they go in there. By the end of the year, we have about, I don't know how many practices. You're allowed 150 whatever, but when you think of lifting, and there's days we run sprints. It's a 3-period sprint. They write their times. They have a sheet, a couple pages where they just keep their times and see how they improve through the years,
Yeah.
through the year. By the end of the year, I tell them to bring their notebooks to the Big 12s and the Nationals. And I'm like, this notebook is confidence because in there
Mm.
is your growth. And they flip through the pages and they go through the talks and the different mental Mondays that they've been through and how to
Yeah.
think right, how to talk right, how to meditate, all these things they've learned in that notebook. And so it's an important thing. So I make them carry it with them, and that's a whole document, a journal or notebook filled of expect to win. This
Yeah.
is what you did throughout the year to grow and
Mm.
get better.
That is so cool. Now, do you find the kids go through multiple notebooks because they write so much stuff down?
Yeah, they'll use one a year. They like to keep different years, and some of them have tons of stuff written, and some guys don't like it. But
Right.
they get I make them just do the days you're supposed to.
Yeah. Do
But
some
then
kids like, this is
eventually they start doing more.
yeah.
It's funny. Some guys don't like the mental Mondays, but eventually they start to.
Right.
And I always tell my coaches, don't force them, just let them hang around.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll buy into it.
Yeah.
They'll see others doing it, and they'll see that some of it does make sense. I mean,
Well,
you should always be journaling. I mean, when you finish, I had good teachers that after you struggled on a test, don't move on to the next subject, go back and figure out what
yeah.
you did wrong. So when we
Right.
get back from a tournament, especially the first tournament of a year, what went right? What
Yeah.
went wrong? What can you
Yep.
do better?
Yep.
What did you forget? Do you need to make a list? How did you pack your bags? We do it before we go and then after, how to be prepared. But all these things are, if you want to be great, all the details matter.
Yeah. Oh my
If you want
God.
to be a successful business, all the little details matter. If you want to be a great wrestler, details matter.
Right. And that's a thing that I think young people have a hard time believing in is that the smallest little details sometimes can make a difference between winning and losing,
Yep.
you know? And so when you have a national champ, how much does that influence the other guys who don't believe? Hey, I'm not journaling. Oh, he just won the national championship. He's doing it. Maybe I better do it.
Well, it's not even just a national champ. It's like the kid that's getting the 4.0. What is
Mm,
he doing?
yeah,
We'll bring them up. What do you do? Well, I make time to study. I do this. So he has better habits, probably better habits than what the average
yeah,
guy has. The
yeah,
average guy is that, wakes up, sees the rain, and puts the covers back over his head. I'm not
yeah,
walking through the rain to go work out, or I'm not going to go make sales calls in the rain. I'll wait where the other guy's pushing through it. I mean, Keegan O'Toole had a torn ACL this year. We said we're shutting you down for 6 weeks, and we shut him down for 6 weeks. We didn't shut him down. He was doing rehab. He was doing strengthening.
yeah,
He was watching film. He was helping coach. Whatever he could do, he would do. And he believed and trusted in his strength coach, his trainer,
mm,
his doctor, his coaches, and what we were doing. And I said, you're gonna have to. And then he had to learn to wrestle differently. And he still, I mean, he goes on and he doesn't win the national title. He loses in overtime in the national
oh,
title. And I'm like, afterwards, we were sitting, of course, he's upset and I'm upset. And yet, the first thing he starts talking to me about is how he didn't finish the single leg and he's got to get better. And he's already in that mode of, I've
yeah,
got to get better at I finished that single. I win the national title. I got to get better at that. And coach, when I
yeah,
heal up, I'm going to be working single finishes. And I'm like, man, you're on a different level. You got to have that that growth mentality like that. That he's a senior. He's now going into freestyle, but he knows to win the
yeah,
gold of the world championship, I got to finish that single. And but he didn't say the ACL tear was why I lost the national championship
right,
or the way I had to change the way I wrestle is I didn't finish that takedown. I own it. I have to
yeah,
finish that. And that's ownership is a big thing of why. And so you see that personality, you talk to kids, you've got to own
yeah,
your problems and how you got to get better. And that's what the great ones do. So Keegan's a great example because he's won national titles and world titles, but he's also lost. And he continues to do all the little details. But the great student, the great worker, who are these special? And we had a day the other day just about Ben Askren and all the great attributes. Ben's in a hospital bed right now. So a lot of the guys were down. But
yeah,
what are the attributes of Ben? And we talked about Ben and all the great things he brought to the program and it brought the room up. And
yeah,
man, we got to be like that. So teach them that way. We call it tiger style behaviors.
yeah,
A lot of times in business, coaching, or even in family as a parent, you see the bad things your kid does, or you see the bad thing your athlete does, and you talk about that. I remind myself, what are the tiger style behaviors? We got to have a couple days we start practice with good behaviors. And I'm thinking we had an RTC practice today, and I had a coach, and I forgot, and I'm kicking myself right now. I had a coach from our camp that just happened write an email, or a parent write an email about a coach. I make all my guys coach a team and how he impacted his son. And he gave me the name of my wrestler, and I said I'm glad he was living it, living tiger style.
yeah,
Expect that, but it's awesome that he did that. I'm glad he impacted your son, and he grew during the week. And I'm going to let this kid yell. No, and I forgot to
yeah,
tell him I got it. But that's recognizing a tiger style behavior
mm,
because when you recognize that, then others will want to follow. That everybody's doing it. That's the old
yeah,
Chick-fil-A. My
yeah,
pleasure. Everybody's doing it. But you still got to recognize, man, Jeff, I saw you doing this the other day. It was awesome.
yeah,
I'm really glad you're living it like that. But and let others know that too. And then that's like a kid gets from a D to a C plus on a paper because you worked really hard at it. I make my academic advisor come in and bring up guys that are improving and working hard. And it's amazing. Guys are, man, yeah, I got a B plus on that paper. If we
yeah,
didn't recognize that behavior, we'd only be recognizing the A's, just the
yeah,
national champ. No, he worked his butt off to get that
yeah,
B plus, and eventually that's going to become an A, and you're going to turn it into that because you've recognized that by working hard, it does work.
yeah. It's progress.
Yeah.
Recognize the progress, not just the result, but the work and
Yes.
the progress to get there, the process. You
Yep.
know, in your book at the end, I forget who it was, but I think it was one of your wrestlers. He had a bad ankle or something.
That was
And
Keegan.
okay, and he's like, "I'm gonna die for this" or something. He said,
Yeah.
and it's like,
That was his first national championship. He blew his ankle out. I
yeah,
saw it happen. He was wrestling a guy trying to get extra team points and hit a move, and I saw his ankle pop. He
oh,
finishes the takedown, rides the kid out, and he comes off. I said, "Did you hurt your ankle?" And he's like, "Yes." And he looks at Doc, our team Doc, and he's like, "We got to do something." We weren't allowed to talk to him about it. Doc didn't say anything else, took care of whatever he could do for it. They taped it tight. We never bugged him about it. We
yeah,
changed his warm up a little bit, and he just changed his style. He's going to try and take a guy down and just ride him, and that's it.
yeah,
And ends up making the finals and winning the national title. I remember before the national championship match, I said, "Doc, how is it?" He's like, "Coach, it's a really bad high sprain. I don't know how
yeah,
he's wrestling on it." I'm like, because he doesn't think he has a really bad high sprain. He's just focused in on wrestling and he's finding
yeah,
a way. And he warmed up like he was 100%. I was like,
yeah,
what the? Did you give him some crazy drugs, Doc? He's like, I
yeah,
did nothing for him.
yeah,
And his mindset was so strong. And you hear this, people
yeah,
have cured themselves with their mind with
yeah,
cancer, have lifted a car off a
yeah,
child.
yeah,
And he went out there and wrestled and had to find a way to win, and he did.
yeah.
And it was after he took that tape off, that thing swelled up.
I
He
bet.
couldn't walk for 3 months. He was in
Oh
so
my
much pain.
God.
And so it's just the power of the mind is such an
Yeah.
important thing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they can take the pain and just like put it over here for a little while,
you have to.
you know? So it's crazy. In your book also you talked about some wrestlers that had just a different style, right? And it
Well, that was
wasn't
Ben Askren.
okay,
You
and it
know,
wasn't traditional like everybody
no,
else. It was hard to coach, but then it became the norm. Like, hey, you guys had to adapt and grow and be able to coach to a different style. To different. Can you talk about that? Because some coaches are just like, nope, doesn't fit, out, forget it.
yeah.
But you took it and ran with it,
Yeah, I remember watching Ben on film, and I had coached, and a lot of, and Ben didn't. When I was talking to Ben about it, he didn't realize this either. But when I was coaching at Cornell, there was a young man that's dad wrestled that way and was a great coach at Memphis High School, and this kid did all these leg passes and rolls and just a different style, but he didn't make it popular. And there
yeah,
were people that wrestled this way, but this kid just, Ben wasn't the best of athletes and strong and all that. And so he learned to wrestle a different style, a more, where he got in these scrambles and he
yeah,
just kept making it and working at it and perfecting it and going from level 1 to 2 to 3 and taking it beyond just a couple steps and became successful with it and was also a great pinner and pinned people from these scrambles and ends up winning the Heisman of our sport, which is called
yeah,
the Hodge twice. But it was if I didn't have that open mindset as a coach, no, you're not going to wrestle that way. If I didn't get exposed to it before, I don't know if I would have recruited him. And I know a lot of coaches, when he first came in, said that'll never work. And
right,
I truly believe, man, this kid's special. I hear his mindset. I hear the way he is. He's an intelligent young man. He's dominating. And
yeah,
he's in high school. It's going to dominate when he gets here, when he gets stronger. And he did. And it was, but we had to be open to it. And I still had, man, you got to stop doing it. Oh, that crap's not going to work on the best. And he kept proving them wrong. Shoot, even when he graduated and said he was going to the MMA, they said he wouldn't be good. And I think his career record was 19-2. So he did pretty good. He There's other ways to do things.
yeah,
I think I'm a history guy. When you look at the history of underdogs winning, they found other ways to win. The
yeah,
American army defeated the greatest army. The Great Britain's army was the greatest in the world at that time, and we figured out a different way to fight
yeah,
through guerrilla warfare. And they found a different way, and that's what Ben discovered. I'm not athletic, and I can't
yeah,
hit blast doubles and all these things. I got to find, a funk. It was called funky wrestling. He
yeah.
it became that was he would come out to a song, the
Funky
funk.
Town.
We got the funk,
We got the
and
funk.
it
Okay,
was it was great. And he wore tie dye shirts, and
all
everybody
right.
thought he was this partier, and he wasn't. And but it's funny. But now he's written 2 books, and he's got 7 academies. It's amazing how far he's gone. It's
Yeah,
special because of his mindset.
yeah.
You know who his idol was?
No.
Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
So when I was recruiting him, every letter I sent him, personal note, ended with a Muhammad Ali
Is he the
quote.
one who gave all the notes back to you?
No, I don't think that was
Remember you
him.
said one of your wrestlers
Yeah.
came back and said, "Coach, I've saved every letter of
One,
note you've
one of my
given."
assistants, Don Bradley, right now still has them all in a binder.
That's what it
All
was.
the notes, his mom
Yeah,
saved them all, so he has got them. But I would write Muhammad Ali quotes, which there's a lot of, and
yeah,
he loved that. That I knew that that was his guy, and he was had that personality like that.
yeah,
That I said, you can come be that here. You can
yeah.
be the Muhammad Ali, the guy that is groundbreaking and the greatest of all
Right.
time. Be it at Mizzou.
Now, again, your book was so good, and the stories in there are incredible. And I remember the one story. Well, I don't know, maybe this was the kid, but he said, "Hey, listen, we haven't had a national
It was that.
champion.
Yep.
Come here and be the first versus go to
Yeah.
this school and be the 10th or 20th or whatever."
Well, I was selling them on the vision, that
Yeah,
belief that
yeah,
Ben, no, we haven't had a national champ. We haven't had, and all the other coaches were saying, you go there, they've never had it.
yeah.
And I'm like, exactly, we've never had it. They're
Right.
saying it as a negative, but just think about it. You're going to be
And how
the
many have you
first
had
guy
now?
to be it, and you're going to be a legend here. You're
Right.
going to be the guy that turns this program around. But by building that relationship with him, I knew his personality was he loved the limelight and the wanted to be out in the front and wanted to lead a program, was a great leader and wanted that to happen. So his goal and vision was, I'm coming there and we're going to do
Yeah,
this. And I'm helping you recruit this guy. So of
yeah,
course, one of his teammates and one of his friends from Wisconsin came with him. We
yeah,
started recruiting other kids to him, and it just all of a sudden this culture grows. These great
yeah,
kids are coming in because I call him the Pied Piper, and he had that personality because he got it would actually hurt the other coaches when they were telling him that if you
yeah,
go to Mizzou, they've never had that, and he's like, all right, you're right, I'm going to Mizzou then. I want to
yeah.
be that.
And how many have you had since?
We've had 6 total national champs, but they've won 10 national
Yeah,
titles. So up there. I wish we had more. We've lost a couple that we'd like
that's
to have
okay.
some of those back, but it's
That's okay. But you know what? You help that young man figure out his why,
yes,
right? Which is all part of your like, what's the purpose? What's the why? How come? And the Tiger style, man, it is so cool. And
it is.
I appreciate the fact that you wrote that book. I read it, and I'm going to use it here, in my world, and there's so many pieces. It's just, you know, it could just take one page that can make a difference in everybody's life. Just one
I had
page out
this
of your
I
book.
had this happen with a young man who isn't even a wrestler. His dad's a wrestling coach, so I know him, and I met him at the Oklahoma duel down in Oklahoma. I gave him a book because he's a friend of mine. And his son, who plays an instrument, he's in high school, and his son read it. And he was going through a tough time before that. And then he read this book on a church trip. And he's like, Coach, I lost running for student council. He wrote me this big long letter,
Yeah,
and I've only talked with him a few times, and he's like, I was really disappointed. All my friends around me were like, next year, don't even bother with that. This is crap. You're not going to win, and this and that. And he goes, I read your book. It inspired me. I promise you, next year at this time, I'm going to be battling for that, place to get on the student council because this. But I was like blown away by it. I
yeah,
called him up. I'm like, can I use this? Because this is a
yeah,
great story. This is
yeah.
I mean, I didn't write a book to make, sure it would be nice if you make money, but I wrote it to inspire people and
To
impact.
make a difference.
This is not even a wrestler. And
Yeah,
I've had the other day, I was walking through my neighborhood, and a dad was teaching his kid how to ride a bike. And he looked up and saw my wife and I walking. He's like, I didn't even know who the guy was. He goes, Coach, I'm doing my one more. I'm doing my
Ah,
one more as a dad. I'm getting this bike stuff done. We got to get this down. And I just thought that he read my book. He knows what one
yeah,
more is, and it's cool that if you can impact a life, one life. But
oh
I'm
yeah,
seeing it with. I get notes every week with pictures about the
yeah.
book, so it's cool.
I can't imagine the ripple effect you've had if you think of all the kids you've coached and all the people they have maybe coached and they've touched. Just the ripple. It's gotta be, and then there's speeches and the people in the audience, and
Yeah,
it's gotta be thousands and thousands of people.
it's fun because I get to wake up and do this.
Yeah,
Think about that. I get to wake
yeah,
up and do this, and it's
yeah,
people are like, when are you going to retire? It's like, man, I'm having fun.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is great.
Yeah.
I get to do these things and, be a part of kids' lives and stay
Yeah.
young with them, and then
Right.
also get to impact other people.
Yeah.
And I'm good friends with the head coaches at Mizzou, so I get to go speak to the football team and
Yeah.
hang out with we have a successful softball program, and I'm just friends with these coaches, and we
Yeah.
share ideas, and I get to speak to their teams and impact other student athletes. So I mean, that's part of coaching. I
Yeah.
think my dad was a teacher and a coach, and I saw the students, and that's the one thing I do miss, not being in the classroom, because I love teaching. And that's just it's a when you can teach, you're really changing a life, because you're
Yeah.
not just teaching that subject, you're
Yeah.
teaching a life skill that they're going
Right.
to have for other things, and that's my why. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it, and that's why I've enjoyed doing it for, what is it? This is my 38th year.
It's amazing how quickly the time goes, isn't it?
Yes.
You
Yeah, it
know?
doesn't feel like 38 years, but it is.
Yeah.
28 at Mizzou. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's looks like it's one hell of a ride, I'll tell you that, you know.
yes,
But Brian, we talked about a ton of stuff, right?
yes.
We kind of all over the map, but it's all about your book, Tiger Style, which is, again, I'm going to recommend it again. I'm going to put my top 10 takeaways on LinkedIn for those who want to see it. What I pulled from the book, I'm going to put it in there all over my social media stuff. I highly recommend. This is a must read for coaches, athletes, or anybody in life to read it. But is there anything we haven't touched on you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
There's a ton of, I mean, there's a lot of little things, but I just think it's, in today's world, it's this microwave. I want to get everything done quick
Yeah.
and buy stuff online. I don't even want to go to the store anymore.
Yeah.
Everything's quick and fast.
Right.
And I tell my guys, man, if you want to eat a good steak, you don't go to McDonald's, and that's not a cut on McDonald's, but you're
Right.
going to go to this great steakhouse, and you want to get it, and it takes a lot longer. You don't get it in a minute. And to be great at anything, it takes time. And I think
Yeah.
people want things done quickly, and I think part of the becoming great is the process, and embracing the process is what I'm teaching kids. Enjoy practice. Enjoy that you're a student at Missouri. Don't say, man, I'm sick of this class, I want to get out of it. You're going to take something that, enjoy the process and enjoy your life. So I think they talk to people when they're, in their last years, what do you regret the most in your life? And the biggest thing that comes out of that is enjoying the people that
Yeah.
are around you.
Right.
Don't always love the one you're with. Love the people you're with. I love the people at Missouri. I love the people, my kids. I still communicate daily with guys from my previous days of
Yeah.
coaching, from previous years.
Yeah.
Love the guys you're with, love the people you're with. I think that would
Yeah.
be it. Understand that find your why, and then love it, and love something. Get a job that you love doing, and you'll have a great life. I have.
Well, I can tell you this, I guarantee it, and I have never spoken to one of your athletes. I can tell by just reading your book and listening to you that the guys you are with love you. I guarantee it.
I hope so.
I guarantee it. You ooze the the giving mindset. You don't take anything. You give,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
and I can tell by, for those who are just listening, the pictures on the behind you on the wall of those are champions, right? Those are
Yes,
winners.
for
Those
all
are
my national champs out there.
national champs. Those are intense guys, and just look at their faces. You know, the joy, the happiness, the excitement, the thrill. The accomplishment. You can't explain that on a piece of paper.
No,
You know. So, but Brian, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see who your next national champ's going to be.
appreciate that. Thank you, Jeff.